Buenos dias, buenas tardes, and hello wherever you are. Welcome to another episode of Latina Life with Jenna Molina. Today's Super Latina is a vibrant, creative, brilliant entrepreneur. She's the founder and CEO of Navarro Coffee Company. Inspired by her love and her childhood, growing up on her family's coffee farm in El Salvador, she decided to turn that love and passion into a business, all while still having a full-time job and being amazing at it as a digital producer for an Emmy nominated, nationally syndicated entertainment news show, Access Hollywood. And that is where we first met and our paths crossed. So, so lucky and so happy to welcome to the show, Emely Navarro. Thank you.
Yay!
Hi, how are
Thank you
you?
for having me. I'm so good. I'm excited.
Oh my God, I am so excited to have you. I was so excited when I heard about you starting your business. So I'm like, okay, we need to have you on the podcast. You need to come here, you need to tell the story because I know it's not all sunshine, right? It's like there's a lot to learn from you, but I was really impressed and inspired by you because I
Thank
know
you.
one, you're brilliant at your job, which is where we met at Access Hollywood, and it's a full-time thing, and to turn a passion project into a business, it's huge. And kudos to you.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
let's start from the beginning. Growing
Okay.
up in El Salvador, I love your story. So what do you remember about growing up in El Salvador? What was that like for you?
I kind of remember a lot. My parents met when like the 90s and then they got married. My dad migrated my mom over here and I was born in LA, but I was 3 months when I went to El Salvador and I was there until I was about to turn 6. So I kind of remember like ages 4, 5, and 6. I just remember feeling so loved and like being surrounded by family because my mom's entire family was there, or they still are there. And a majority of my dad's family's there as well. So I just remember like my mom's side, they all live down the street from each other, like literally next door. And so it just always felt like people were always around. And like, I think because we were all so close, like family was so ingrained in like everything we did. Like there was always someone nearby that could help. And I remember being like so Salvadorian, like the little lingos I would say, and just like loving doing like certain things and like not wanting to leave. Like I remember when my mom, because they told me like you're from like the US, you were born in California. Like my dad would visit every few months. So like I knew it wasn't a surprise that I was like moving back. But then when I got like to 4 and 5, I remember my mom was like, okay, like when you start first grade, like we're gonna move back. And I did not want to go. I was like, no, because I my cousins were all 3 of my cousins were all like a few months apart. So they
Mhm.
were like siblings to me. We all grew up together. And I was like, no, 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 you're gonna leave and I'm gonna stay. But I
Oh,
had but I had to leave.
oh, and both your parents were from El Salvador.
Yeah, so they're both from the same town. They didn't really know each other growing up because they were in different grades. But when they got older, my dad moved during the Civil War. I think he moved in like the 80s, and he got here. And then um, my mom, he would always go back to El Salvador for like his vacations, and he was friends with my mom's brother, and so they re-met at the beach in the
Okay,
90s.
got it.
Yeah.
Now, are you the only child?
For my both of my parents, I am. I have two older half sisters on my dad's side from his previous marriage. So, but they're older. I think my oldest sister's like 43, 42. And then my
Okay,
other
baby.
sister's 36, I think. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I'm the baby by a lot. I grew up an only child pretty much because they were so much older that I like
right.
when you're little, you can't really relate when they're that
Right.
much older. You don't have as much in
Yeah.
common.
Oh my God, that's a whole other topic.
Yeah.
Whole other topic for the Latina family here. But so now you moved to the States when you were
Yes.
6. So where did you move to, first of all? Like what area, in California? And then what was that like for you, especially as Latina?
I moved from El Salvador, Ciudad Arce, like a small little town, to the valley, the San Fernando Valley, Van Nuys specifically.
Mhm.
Um, and we lived in an apartment for a while. It was a culture shock. I don't think I realized until now I'm like fully an adult how kind of traumatic it was. Because I
Mm,
think at the time I just like, this is my life, whatever. But it was just crazy. Like I didn't speak any English.
okay.
So when I was little, they didn't teach me English. I just knew Spanish. So I started first grade and it was like everyone spoke English and I was the only one who spoke Spanish. I couldn't keep up because it was like literally a foreign language to me. And thankfully, my first grade teacher spoke Spanish. So he would take me off to the side and kind of teach me the lesson in Spanish, but that also wasn't fully helping me because I still had to catch up on English. And so it was hard. My parents put me in a private Catholic school in first grade. And then when I got to seventh grade, my teacher she was white and she obviously couldn't speak Spanish. She couldn't help me. And so that's kind of where pretty much I got kicked out of school, to be honest.
Oh,
And
really?
that was yeah, and that was my first experience with, I guess you could say prejudice for being Latina because she didn't want to help. She was super rude. She would write my name so my name's spelled Emely, like the Latina way to spell it. But she would change it and be like, no, your name is spelled Emily. So in my report card and my ID, it's Emily. And she would just try to she was kind of just mean to me. And I was little and I couldn't really understand it. And so I got kicked out of school and then I had to go to a predominantly Latin school, which was honestly a blessing in disguise. But I just remember being confused why no one could understand me and feeling like left out
Right.
because
And
of the language.
so what got you through that? I'm sure you talked to your parents. I mean, was there certain advice they gave you, or what was the person, or what did you lean on during that time?
Well, my parents thankfully were super on it, especially my mom was a teacher in El Salvador and a therapist.
Okay.
So she was really on it to make sure that when I got kicked out of that school, and it was a predominantly white school, it was very far from where we lived. My dad lived he worked by Beverly Hills, so the school was off Rodeo, super there. So it was very high, rich people, predominantly white. And then I got moved to a school in Van Nuys that was predominantly Latino, and they had an English as a second language program. So I was in second grade, I was taken out. They the teachers realized really early, she can barely speak English. So they would pull me out of classes. And my mom made sure that I went to a school that had an ESL program because at that point we had lived here for a year. And so she was researching, my mom couldn't speak English either. So she was like, I can only help her so much.
Right.
And so she found this ESL school and they would pull me out. So they would do tests to see where is she at English. And then whenever we had, hi.
Well, hello, Melina.
Hi, I've been here. I just didn't want to jump in or anything, so I've been listening. So sorry about that, but I've been here.
Yes,
No,
yes.
Sorry, go ahead, continue. I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're good. So yeah, my mom found this ESL class and they would pretty much take me out of my classes, any arts class or something like that, not a primary, an English or math class. It would take me out and they would teach me everything with a specific tutor for me.
Okay.
And I did that. Honestly, I learned pretty quick. By third grade, I was back at level, the same level. And then they took another test to see where I was. And then they checked my IQ level because everyone thought I was slower and I just because I couldn't speak English. So everyone was like, oh, she might have to get held back a grade. And my mom was like, no, she's super smart. She just had a hard time keeping up. So then when they tested my IQ or something like that, they took a special gifted program or something like that. And then they saw that I did really well. So then I passed that and I was able to get into magnet schools. So schools that weren't in my district.
Right.
And then for fourth grade, I moved to a better school in the Valley that had special programs for gifted kids. I don't know, that sounds weird.
Yeah.
But,
No.
so then I moved.
Programs here in LA, they have all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was hard. My mom, she tried to help me. Kids would bully me, especially the first school I went to. And then when I moved in fourth grade, kids would bully me a lot because I just looked different and my English was still kind of off. And she just my mom, there was only so much she could do because she also couldn't fully speak English. And so yeah, it was hard. It was hard. And now that I'm growing up, I'm wow, it really shaped who I was, of insecurities that I've overcome over the years of just being oh, I need to fit in. It was so much trying to change who I was to fit in because I was already so different. And
Mhm.
like years of like, I don't want to speak Spanish because everyone would make fun of me for speaking Spanish. And my
Mhm.
mom was like, no, that's what makes you special. That's what makes you unique. Like, we're going to keep
Mhm.
speaking Spanish. And it would hurt her because she obviously then would only, and my dad too, they would only speak Spanish in the house, which means their English could only get so much better.
Mhm.
But in the end, I'm glad they did that. But for like a while, honestly, from like fourth to like seventh grade, it was just hard, like trying to fit in, like changing my personality to fit in with all the kids at school. And then finally in eighth grade, I got a really good set of friends. And a lot of them were Latinos too, who were just like, you're so cool. Like, you don't have to change who you are. And then I started realizing, like, you're right. Like, I don't have to keep trying to fit in with every group at school to like be cool. Like, I am cool. It took a while.
Hmm.
Oh my gosh, that's so tough to go through that, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it
Yeah,
is. It is.
right.
But I feel like everybody does, right?
It's
I feel
true.
like it's something that I know that I went through. Like what you're saying is very similar to how it was for me. Like I was an only child. I was trying to be my mom's translator, but also like help my mom speak English and like try to fit in with my friends because I was different. So I totally get that. But it's such a story that I feel is repeated,
Yeah.
through
So
our
well.
culture.
I mean, kudos
Yeah.
to your parents, honestly, to your mom
Yeah.
for searching to find the right place for you. Because sometimes some people
Yeah.
just don't know what to do when that happens. And I just have to say, I actually went to school in Beverly Hills, so I do understand, what you're talking about. But I was born here. Obviously, like English was my first language, so it was much
Yeah.
easier, for me, in that sense. But yeah, it just kind of shines the light, and maybe it's changed now. I don't know, on the fact that sometimes schools do fail, whether they're in Beverly Hills or in LA or, in the Valley, what have you, in regards to having the support system that is needed, especially
Yeah.
for the Latino community.
Hmm.
I,
Yeah.
I've seen it going from like, now that I'm a parent, Melanie and I are both parents, and
Hmm.
seeing our kids go through the school system. And they went to a public school system, and I see the support that's given to different groups, and
Hmm.
how the Latino group is always at the end
Yeah.
of these resources. And it's just
And
Hmm.
infuriating.
it's true. And when I was little, it felt like I was the only one going through it. And
Hmm.
then when I got older and I met like more like first generation Latinos and people who have really similar stories to me, I'm like, wow, like I guess my story's not so unique in that way. And then that kind of makes me more sad because I'm like, wow, if there were so many Latinos going through what I was going through,
Yeah.
like why
It
why
should have
wasn't I given the
changed by the
help?
time. Yeah. Should have
Exactly. Or
changed
like,
by the time you're in school. Yeah. 1000%.
yeah. And it makes me sad, but I'm hopeful that now hopefully kids are more inclusive, aware, and parents are more aware too to like not be so mean to other, like the kids
Yeah.
don't have to be mean to other
Yeah.
kids or just put
Or
them in hard
different.
situations. Yeah,
You know what
exactly.
I mean? Because that's just your culture's different, your language was different, but that for some reason is, not accepted, unfortunately. And that's what makes you special.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
So
that's what
overcoming
makes you
that.
special.
Now let's talk about how you ended up coming to, you were in the Valley. I know our offices, or we
Yeah.
met in
Yeah,
Burbank.
I'm still in the
Melina's
valley.
is just like a stone's throw away over at her offices at California Live. But tell us about the path. How did you get to, the entertainment news space, working in digital, working in broadcast? Like, what was that like for you? Because to a lot of people, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't do that. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, I knew really early. I don't know if it's because I'm a Virgo and like a specific, I don't know if it's like that, but I knew really young that I wanted to work in entertainment. Um, I think a lot of kids grow up watching like Access or Entertainment Tonight. For me, it was E News. And I was like, I want to be Juliana Rancic, or like, I want to do what Ryan Seacrest does. And so
Mm-hmm.
really early on, I knew I wanted to do it. And I think it stemmed from like growing up in El Salvador and then coming here, and like pop culture was such a big thing. Like I remember growing up and seeing like Britney Spears and Paris Hilton and Lindsay Lohan doing all that stuff, and it seemed so like what they were doing was not always great, but just like the coverage
Yeah,
of it and like people going to carpets and stuff was like
right.
fascinating. And so then from in high school we had like a broadcast journalism class, so I quickly did that, and video production. And then I wanted to I looked up when it came time to go to college, I looked up good schools with journalism programs. So I wanted to go to USC, Annenberg, or San Diego State had a good journalism program. So that's where I ended up going to state. But it was hard. It's not easy. I didn't know anybody in the industry, and this industry, sadly, there is a lot of people that can help open the door, and it's hard when you don't really know anyone. My dad works in hospitality, my mom's a teacher, so it was like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm gonna make it. And so I went to San Diego State and I got into news because everyone told me that in order to be taken seriously, I had to go to news first.
Right. It's true.
Which it is, it helped me. It definitely helped me. I started going more on like the newspaper route. So I was editor of my college newspaper, news editor of the college paper. And then I got a job at local station, 2 different local stations as a PA and as an intern. And that helped me get my first job out of college, which was at a news station in San Luis Obispo called KSBY. So
that's amazing. And that's where my daughter goes to school.
Yes.
Yeah, San Luis Obispo. So slow.
Yeah. So I know a lot about Cal Poly.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was like, I just never like stopped working in college. Like I knew what I wanted to do. And so I would juggle like working at 2 different stations, being on the college newspaper, like not having a social life sometimes, but looking back, I should have, gone out more, but it got me to where I am.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, so I was in SLO for almost 2 years. I started off as the weekend producer, and then I moved on to produce the 5 and the 6 o'clock shows, which was a lot. I actually love producing. I always knew I wanted to produce. I never wanted to, and still don't really care to be on camera. I'm more of like a behind the scenes gal,
Right.
And so I produced the news there, and I won an Emmy while I was at the station for producing a show. And
we
then
got
I
Emmy
left.
winner right here.
Oh, that's awesome.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Wait, you've never told me this. We're together.
Yeah.
It's
like not something that comes up in conversation.
But I love that she doesn't have to lead with that. So there you go. You know what I mean? So
it's true.
If it
amazing,
fits the
though.
story naturally, I'll bring it out. But but yeah, so I left because I knew I like didn't want to work in news. Like I'm happy I went down the news path because I think it made me a really strong writer, and it really helped form my brain in a different way. Because like when you're working in local news, it's such a different beast. Like you don't sleep, all you think about is news, and you're learning to write really fast on the go, but also fact check everything to like a T. And so it really helped me with Access Now. But I just was like, I hate this. I mean, I like producing, but like the news lifestyle is just not for me. It's not very sustainable. So I left, went to work in advertising, and then COVID hit. So I kind of got stuck in advertising, but thankfully it was a really good job. Like I no complaints. And then I saw the job posting at Access on the digital team. I was like, I knew I wanted to get out of advertising. And I was looking for jobs, but it was COVID, so there weren't many jobs. And I saw the posting for Access Hollywood, and I was like, I'm going to get that job. And then I knew someone who worked at NBC. I was like, I'm getting the job. And then my friend worked at NBC Sports in Chicago, but I was like, do you know the email of the recruiter? So I can email the recruiter my reel. And so she's like, here it is. I emailed her cold, like literally never met this woman. I just emailed her. I was like, hi, I'm Emely Navarro. Like I'm an Emmy award-winning producer. Like, here's my clips, here's my resume, here's everything. I just applied. And in 2 days, she responded.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Well, one, your resume is impressive. Already going in there as Emmy winner. Like, how could they not? Right one to the But 2, I mean, amazing, just behind the scenes advice and to like what you need to do when you're trying to get to where you want to go. Reach out to the people that you know, reach out to people that like your friends. And be right. So we
absolutely
all remember that we know someone or someone we know somebody, and
the worst thing, and the worst thing they can say is no. Like I was like, I don't know anyone in the industry. I was emailing people on LinkedIn or like messaging them like, hi, I see you work at X, Y, and Z. Like any tips for trying to get into the industry? Sometimes they would respond, most of the time they wouldn't, which is fine. And I was like, I'm going to open a door for me. Like, I'm not going to take no for an answer. And like, if it takes me 4 years to get to where I want to be, then so be it. But at that point too, I was like, I'm not gonna take a PA job anymore. Like I'm past that
Yeah.
level. So it was also a little bit harder to find
Get
a
to
job
that
that fit
next
my
level.
skills
Yeah.
and not take a step down. But I just
Right.
did not take no for an answer.
Yeah.
And explain to people though what exactly a digital, like what you do now, like what that job was for people that don't know.
So at Access Hollywood, there's a specific digital team. And what we do is pretty much like anything on social or on the internet that you see for Access that's not the actual TV show, we handle that. So when I got hired, the description was like write, edit, produce 3 news videos a day, which would basically be like, instead of you going on a website and reading an article about it, we make a video about it. So it's the same exact information, but it's a video form instead of an article. And so we're basically editing videos, right? Every day. We're writing them, tracking them, cutting them, posting them. And then whenever the talent at Access goes to a red carpet, we'll watch the red carpet live and then we'll cut the interviews and post them on our YouTube channel. We're making like social media content for shorts, for TikTok, for reels. It's like a really 360 position. You're kind of wear multiple hats on the team. And we also get to interview people sometimes. So once in a while, I'll go on a carpet or I'll interview people. So that's what I liked about the team too. I was like, I feel like I won't be stuck in my lane. And at that time, I was like, I just want to get into entertainment. And it seemed like I would learn a lot about different verticals. And then if
because
I
you get
decided
to work with a lot of different teams.
yeah. And then I was like, maybe I do want to be on camera one day. Like at least I can practice more going on red carpets. Because at that point, I had never gone on red carpets. Like at my news job, I never left my desk. Sometimes I go to court, but court was not very glamorous.
Right. It's not what you wanted to do. You're doing a good job representing the Latinas in the
Thank
digital
you.
space. I know.
Yeah, the one Latina on my team. But we're out here holding the fort.
That's good, and that's what it's important about us, like, being out there and going into different areas like this. I mean, yes, I remember we worked together. You got to interview Becky G, I think maybe Camilo, I'm not sure, a lot of other people. So it's good that, and then doing it in both English and Spanish, I remember.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. It's those little steps that gets us, more representation, hopefully more opportunities, more numbers. I was just reading somebody, an article today about someone from the National Hispanic Media Coalition saying that, the representation is still not there when it comes to the executive level and the people okaying story ideas and pilots and films. And we still need that. That's why we are not represented, in TV in certain areas where other groups are. So
yeah,
we're all out here, ladies. We're student. Everybody
all
out
here.
To us, keep doing what you're doing. We need a family story. Don't give up. And that takes us to the next chapter of your story here. Hold on a second. I got my little coffee cup.
Coffee.
I got my coffee cup. Oh my God, there we go. Yes.
Yay.
Oh my God, it's delicious.
And it smells
so let's go to
so good.
Starting a coffee business. While you're doing like this 24/7
so different.
How, what inspired you? Tell me about that day you went to the farmer's market and you went, this is what I'm gonna do.
Yeah. So I grew up where I grew up in El Salvador. My parents had a coffee farm. So it was my great grandfather's farm. When he passed, it went to my dad's mom and his sisters. So it was like, they were like 5. And so my dad was like, I want the farm. They kind of just didn't really like my dad's mom and his aunts didn't really care too much about the coffee farm. And he's like, I want to do it. So he ended up buying them out and getting the farm for us. And so I grew up with it always like being there, but I did not really care about it at all until I started actually really drinking coffee and thinking, oh, that's kind of cool. But one day I went to a farmer's market in Long Beach and I met this guy who just like had a table and like some coffee urns, and he was selling coffee bags of coffee from Honduras because he was from Honduras. And I tried it and I was like, whoa, this is like really good coffee. Like it's so delicious. And I remember looking over to my best friend and saying, I can do this. Like I literally have coffee beans. I can bring them here. Like I love coffee. I know a lot about coffee farming. And that's kind of where the idea started. And then I talked to my parents about it. I researched it and they got really excited. They were like, you should totally do it. I mean, the coffee's there. And then quickly realized it's like you open a can of worms with certain things. And that's how I felt with the coffee industry. Like my parents know a lot about coffee farming and they have connections in El Salvador, but I knew no one here. I never worked at a coffee shop. I was never a barista. So I was like, how do I meet like anyone who works in coffee and can tell me like what to do? It was the
Right.
blind leading the blind, that being I was leading myself and I was blind in that way. And I quickly realized that it's really hard to import coffee because of the FDA and all the regulations and you
Okay.
know getting it from like let's say our farm to the port, getting making sure it's up to code, shipping it, receiving it. It was just a lot of red tape and I
Okay.
was overwhelmed. So then I decided to pivot and buy coffee from other farms in El Salvador using an importer. And so they have been really helpful. Like I toured one of the farms that I was going to buy coffee from and stuff, and they've been really helpful. And even me contacting the farms myself and stuff like that. So I decided, like, you know what, the goal is to sell my parents' coffee, but it's also to highlight farms in El Salvador because so many people have never tried coffee from El Salvador. And growing up, that's all I had. Like, yeah, once in a while I'll have Colombian coffee, but I was always drinking Salvadorian or even Guatemalan coffee.
Mhm.
And I was like, we have delicious coffee, but because of the Civil War for so many years, it really impacted agriculture in all senses, not just coffee. And now that there's not so much political unrest, the coffee industry is booming again. And I'm like, I want people to try it and to know it's so delicious. And so that kind of became a core pillar of my brand of just not just showcasing coffee from my family, but from other farms and the sustainability practices that they have or what they're doing to make their coffee so unique and different from an African coffee or a Colombian coffee. So that's what I'm doing right now, selling coffee from a farm in El
Oh, and
Salvador.
talk about El Salvador, the coffee beans there. What to you, when you're describing to someone, it's like, oh, how are the coffee beans different?
How is it different? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the one thing that really surprised me is that coffee in El Salvador is grown in the shade because it's a tropical country. And
Oh,
so are a lot of
interesting.
countries in Central America. They're typically grown in the shade opposed to just in the sun because it's so tropical. There's so many storms that if you don't have trees covering the coffee trees, they're going to just, it's not good for the beans. And so that makes them kind of taste a little bit different. And also, coffee in El Salvador is a little bit nuttier, not as acidic or berryish. So a lot of people who like more of a berry fruity coffee, that's more Africa. Salvadorian coffee is more chocolatey, more like caramelly, not really sweet, but just not as like acidic, which I
Mhm.
don't like acidic coffee. I tend to not like coffee from Ethiopia, for instance.
Hmm.
Um, and also like the soil, and like the coffee, my coffee is grown on a volcano, and El Salvador has so many volcanoes, and so does Guatemala. So the volcanic soil adds a different kind of flavor to it as well, and the humidity adds a different type of flavor to it too. So I think I like to describe Salvadoran coffee as a big warm hug. I don't think it's as like intimidating or as like a much of a punch to your tongue when you try it. It's more smooth but delicious and rich.
Oh my gosh. You got to do a master class in like coffee brewing, which brings me up to the fact that you told me one day I'm starting my own coffee company. You were just starting, and I felt like the
Yeah.
next day you had a pop-up and you had a partnership and you had this, and all of a sudden you're like in stores. You're like, I know there's, but tell us how, for young entrepreneurs there, like how did you end up doing that? Like the pop-ups and then how that led to like the stores. Like you're actually being sold in stores.
Yeah, I'm in one store called El Sereno Green Grocer in near South Pasadena. Amazing, amazing, two beautiful, wonderful ladies who gave me the opportunity to sell there. But it was really overwhelming because, as I mentioned before, I know, or at the time knew no one in coffee, and it felt very overwhelming. And there were so many times where I wanted to give up. But then I realized, like, you just have to slowly move the pole down the line till you get to the end. And I just started first like, okay, how am I going to buy the beans, and then how am I going to design the bag, because I ended up drawing the bag and then I got a graphic designer from El Salvador who made it digital. um
Right,
and
right,
it
right.
has a lot of
But I
little,
love what I love about your
Yeah,
bag is that it
it's
already
so
has a
pretty.
message of love. You know what I mean? Because
yeah,
you're like,
thank you.
it's grown with love in El Salvador and roasted in Los Angeles. And that's both are your home. So it's
Yeah,
really sweet.
Thank you. Yeah, there's so much love went into it. And it was very much like when I got to the point of like, okay, I have the coffee. I did not go to business school. I never thought I would have a business. It wasn't something that I was like, I'm going to own a business, be rich one day. That was not at all the goal. It was just like, I saw an opportunity to turn something my parents love. And in part, it's their dream too. My dad's always wanted to sell coffee from his farm. He was just never able to do it. And so it was like, how do I turn something I really love and my parents love into a little bit more? But because of that, I never went to business school. So I felt like I bit off more than I could chew a lot. And then I started taking like little master classes or little like seminars and stuff. And then I just started reaching out to people I knew for pop-ups. My first pop-up that I have every Friday now is at my boxing gym. I boxed for a long time. And a lot of people, when they started trying my coffee, they're like, you should do it in the morning. You should give samples and sell your coffee back. So I asked and they were like, sure. And then other people that I know from other gyms were like, oh, we love this. Let's do it at your gym. So it was like a lot of that or a lot of just Instagram. Like that's how I found I sit in a green grocer. We followed each other on Instagram before I had even launched. And I really loved what they were doing with their store. And it felt so they really are such a community and they make such a community out of their business. And I was like, that's kind of what I want to do with my coffee brand. I don't want people to just drink it on their in the car on their way to work. And so it was really like organic. And I think that's something that's helped me so far is like, I don't want to just sell at like Target because everyone's selling at Target, right? Like I want to sell somewhere that really aligns with my business values and the
Right.
goals that I'm trying to do. And when
But
I'm approaching
where can
people,
people buy your coffee?
so
Or
right
people,
now,
yeah. So let's talk about where they can actually get it to.
right now they can buy it on my website, navarrocoffee.com. We have
Okay.
ground bags and whole bean bags, just a medium roast right now. I'm currently working on coming out with a different roast. And then you can also find me at Edison and a Green Grocer. They sell a couple of my bags as well. And then I try to do at least 2 or 3 pop-ups a month, whether it's at a gym or at a Sereno, or sometimes I'll do little small business markets as well in the valley. So that you can go on my Instagram to see where I'm going to be at every weekend. And my Instagram's Navarro Coffee.
Perfect. So that's because I always like to make sure when people start talking and they start telling their stories, it's like, no, let's give out the information because we all need a little buzz and kick in the morning. So
Yeah.
why not try your delicious coffee from such a beautiful story, right, Jen? I mean,
Oh
my
my gosh.
God.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Before we sign off, maybe just any like, one, two, pieces of advice straightforward for people who want to, start a business like yours. Like what should they do? What should they not do as they start out?
Imposter syndrome is real, but don't ever let it define you or beat you.
Okay.
Like no one knows what they're doing. They're all
Tell
figuring it
me.
out along the way. And so I think that was really like something I had to work over, like or get through when I was starting out, of just feeling like I'm not like, what am I doing? And then realizing along the way, like, no, like I have so many things that could make me a good businesswoman. I have to just own those. And
Mm.
also just don't be scared to reach out to people because the worst thing people can say is no. And that's something I've taken with me with my journalism career, my coffee. Like, I think if you do things from a place of love and you have really good intentions and you reach out to someone with good intentions and not in a malicious way, whether they say no or not, a good opportunity will come to you. And just putting myself out there repeatedly and just expecting a no but hoping for a yes has really helped me also accept those no's when they do come, just being like, this wasn't the right opportunity, but something will come. So just don't let imposter syndrome get you down, and don't let being scared to try something or a no stop you from doing it. Just take it one step at a time. Even if it takes you 4 years to get your business, it took me 2 years to get my business off the ground. Two
Wow.
years of me hoping and wanting it to happen until I finally did it. Tears of joy. And so it doesn't matter how long it takes you to do it, just do it a little bit every day and go at your own pace, because no one is like, literally, if it's your business, like you can do it as fast or as slow as you want. You're your own boss. So don't be too hard on yourself.
Oh my gosh, that's so great. I'm so happy we're sharing your
Oh,
story. I'm really like
Yeah,
yeah, I
thank you for
love it.
having
listening.
me.
Honestly, thank you so much. Well, listen, nuestras latinas, amigas, hermanas, thank you for sharing your time with us, with all of us today and listening to Emily's
Mhm.
story. Always love sharing these inspiring stories with everybody. Continue to listen to Latina Life with Jen and Melina on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, wherever you listen to all your podcasts. And until the next time, besos y
Yeah.
abrazos a todas. Mwah.
Adiós, gracias.
Adiós. Muchas gracias.